Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. WeatherBrains episode number 876. It's a Tuesday night special. This is the weekly show all about weather. This is the pre-show. This is for Tuesday, the 1st of November. On the pre-show here, this is a magical time of the program. We do three things. We typically share boring personal stories. We share humorous anecdotes, and occasionally we say really, really, really outrageous things. So a lot of our folks could not make it last night. It was Halloween. So we decided to move the show to Tuesday night this week. That's the reason for the Tuesday night special. So we're a day late here, but it's going to be a good show. So let's get the embed code and get everybody invited here. We'll get this thing going. I got some new LED lights up here. This is nice. I had the old school, hot, just blaring lights up there for a long, long time. And I'm in a closet. Studio A, the new studio, is right across the hall here. So this is not really a television studio, but they put some new LED lights up here, and they're just great. They're cool. They don't blow out. So sometimes those old ones that they will make when they blow out in a very dramatic way. So thanks to Bill Castle, my main man. I've been with Bill for a long time. Bill said, you need some LED lights back in that closet. So thanks to Bill for making that happen. But I think just about everybody is going to be here tonight. I think so. So let's see here. We can get everybody invited. I've been doing this early and I just forgot. This Tuesday night special, it's a little odd here. All right. Get James A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I think that's everybody. All right. So now everybody has been invited and they'll be magically showing up here. And for those that are looking for the actual show content, move the slider over about 9 minutes. And the pre-show is not on the recorded, produced audio podcast, and most people listen, but some of you do watch live, which is cool. And some people say they just watch the pre-show and then they hang up on us, and that's it. So that's okay too. So November 1st, this starts the tornado season here, down here in the deep south. We consider tornado season where I am from November through May. 1st of November through the end of May. So the long tornado season starts today. But we got a ridge here, so I don't think we have any tornadoes anytime soon. We might touch 80 here later this week. But the ridge should shunt the dynamic storm systems west and north of here. And it looks kind of dry with the ridge and mild through mid-November. And what's going to happen is going to break loose when I take a vacation week. That's what happened last year. I don't get a lot of time off and I don't get to do many things. And I'm not complaining about that. I will never, ever, ever complain. But I don't have much of a life. And one of my vacation weeks last year was the week after Christmas and was totally busted up by a tornado event and then a snow event, which can happen in late December. So typically things get crazy when I try and take a week off, and my next week off will be that week at or just after Christmas. But November, we're all strapped in. And for years, November, you couldn't take a day off in November. It's a ratings month. And really times have changed. I mean, so much has changed in television, but for so long, you could not even remotely think about taking a day off in February, May, July, or November. Those are the intense ratings months where they do deep demographic studies on audiences, and you just couldn't take a day off. But now they've just kind of relaxed that a little bit. Ooh, I see everybody showing up here. We got Bill Murray on the line. Mm-hmm. Bill, what's on your mind?
Well, I'm mad at our guest tonight because he's missing the Sue dinner to be on this silly show.
No, you're fine. Totally fine.
You're mad at him? You're mad at him for missing the Sue dinner?
We moved this show because of Halloween, and we messed up his Sue dinner.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
Well,
So nice of you.
we should be mad at us and not him. I mean, it's our fault.
But I'm not mad at him for letting us. No, it's definitely our fault. I just had no idea. He didn't tell me. I'm mad at him for not telling.
Dustin, I'm sorry. I don't know what you've got
You're
yourself
totally
into, but I'm
fine.
sorry.
You're totally fine. The show's already gone down the tubes. I watch it.
Yeah,
so it's already gone.
right down the tubes.
It doesn't take long.
We lose control here in the pre-show.
Yeah, we went out to get me some Shake Shack, and the stupid Shake Shack app wouldn't work. And so what else going to get me Captain D's, John? There's no Long John Silver in Birmingham. You have to go. How far do you have to go for a Long John Silver, James? I bet you know this.
I didn't think those things existed anymore.
There's one on Quintard in Anniston. I guess unless they're in a gas station, you don't know about them, huh?
Man, let me tell you what.
I heard you found the best gas station food in the world today.
Let me tell you what. This was a bonanza today. So I drove to a little town called Fruithurst. And
used to be Alabama's best speed trap.
Yeah, and so this is near the Georgia state line. This is in the far eastern part of the state. Saw the kids at Fruithurst Elementary School, which was great. They gave me a stock of Little Debbie Christmas tree cakes. It's going to last me through next year, and because they know that. I mean, I've got a stock of these things, and then a Christmas tree cake that they made for me. And then on the journey back on US 78, I came across this place, and let me tell you what. Anytime I see a sign that says the best gas station food ever, I got to stop here. I mean, whoa! I almost ran off the road.
Did you go try it? Or did you run in? Did you run in like Elf and go, "Congratulations!
Yeah. You did it! You did it!" So they were not really open yet. It was like pretty early, and but I can see right away this is an amazing place. In fact, I posted this on Facebook, on my Facebook page. Somebody said this is one of the best restaurants in the Southeast United States, bar none.
Oh my goodness!
And it's in a gas station
or what? It's got a pig.
They've got everything. They've got prime rib. They've got steaks. They got a meat and three thing. It's different every day. And they say the desserts are the greatest desserts in the United States. There's no greater dessert anywhere.
Goodness.
And of course they got Hunt Brothers Pizza on top of all that. So I've got to go by. It's called the Shoal Creek Market and Grill on US 78 in Edwardsville, Alabama. So
why don't we have our WeatherBrains Christmas party over there, James? We could.
I think we need to do that. But goodness gracious, you put a sign up that says best gas station food ever. I'm stopping. I mean, it doesn't matter what hour of the day, I'm stopping. And then all the comments on the social media are just incredible. In fact, one of the Hunt brothers actually got on there. I mean, it's like I can create a circus real quick on social media. So anyway,
did one of the Hunt brothers join in on your tweet today?
Yeah, on the face bag. So it's just like it was like Christmas in November for me, getting the Christmas tree cakes, a Christmas tree cake. And then learning about the best gas station food ever in the world, in the universe, all in one trip. So I can't top that. It was unbelievable.
That would never happen in Flavortown.
No,
never. Jen's not even going to deign to come.
No, she's not going to say anything.
I'm going to say.
So here's this.
Cookie James.
So here's the Christmas tree cake.
Whoa!
Oh man,
that
cool.
thing, that's awesome.
That is
and
really awesome.
it is better than the Christmas tree cake that is attached to that. The cake itself.
Is that an actual Little Debbie, or did they make that as part of
that is an actual Little Debbie kind of on there.
Well, you should take us to your new best friend, Nick Saban. I bet he imbibes of them at Christmas, don't you?
Oh man, he would love the coach and I.
So when
bonanza.
are you getting him on this show, James? Now that
it's obviously got to be
that your best friend
after the season.
during the dead period.
I think his slowest time, it's really kind of after the spring game, the scrimmage, like toward late April and May. That seems to be when he's got a little bit of time. They do a lot of recruiting right after the season is over.
I think you should do WeatherBrains from the field during A-Day at Bryant Denny. What do you say?
Well, that's like on a Saturday.
Herb Street. We have a special Saturday. Kick Herb Street and Joey Galloway out and let you do it.
You know, April and May is pretty slow time around here too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I'm coming to vacation up there with you, James, a lot in April in Tulsa.
We can always blame Rick. He's the one that sends it up our way.
That's true. He does export
clearly
a lot of stuff your way.
Whenever we can, we try hard. That's what that turnpike is there for.
Oklahoma City's biggest export. Right up the Turner Turnpike.
We got everybody here. We got everybody here tonight. Welcome to our television viewers watching.
Because we didn't do it on Halloween. That's right.
We're at the top of the hour. We are now on television, and we're going to get the show here started. I think everybody's here. This is great.
There's two Kims even. That's not bad.
Yeah.
Double Kim.
Oh, wow. Now, Kim had some weird issues last week. That was the strength. You've never had problems at all with connectivity ever until last week. That was weird.
That was so weird. It sure did create some fun, awkward moments where Erica is just talking normally and happily. And then I start accusing her of being an alien. Everyone's like, Kim, are you okay?
All right, let's get this thing started here. All right, record 1, record 2. And here we go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to WeatherBrains. They're kind of a big deal.
Hey, Bill Curtis said that. We're kind of a big deal. WeatherBrains episode number 876. This is the weekly show that's all about weather, longest running weather podcast in the universe. We started this in January of 2006. Here we are still doing the show. It's a Tuesday night special for those that are watching and listening live. We typically do the show Monday night, but so many of our regulars had some Halloween duty. Last night was Halloween, so this is for Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. And look who's back. Rick Smith is back. Rick, good to have you back, man. It's been we've just hadn't been the same without you on the show.
Well, it's good to be back. I got to listen to the shows driving through scenic Alabama and Georgia and Florida. We went down to Orlando to visit my daughter, and it had been a while since we had dumped hundreds of dollars into the Disney properties down there, so we had to make a trip and do that. But it was a good trip. But yeah, I missed being on. It was a great show last week. I didn't really get to listen to the week before yet, but last week's was really, really interesting. It got me through 2 hours of an 18-hour drive very nicely.
There you go. Now, did you stay on the Disney property, or did you stay somewhere else?
We stayed at my daughter's apartment, which is about
okay.
20 minutes off the Disney property, but yeah, much cheaper.
What was your favorite ride, Rick? Favorite ride?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I didn't ride half the rides they wanted me to ride. Let's see. I don't know. I like the Big Thunder Mountain roller coaster. That's about as scary as I get right there.
I like the rock and roller coaster. Rock and roller coaster. Yeah, that's a good one. And Space Mountain, you can't go wrong with that. That's fairly harmless. That's a good one. All right. So, Rick, great to have you back. And I see Troy Kimmel down in Austin. Troy, is it still 107 degrees there?
No, it's down to 105. And so actually, it's 62.9 at the time of our show, and still dealing with my Kit Kats from last night. So it's still Halloween officially here. Like I need chocolate, like I need a hit upside the head. But nevertheless, a little Halloween candy still lingering around.
Leftover Halloween candy. I love it. Neil Jacobs, did you get some good Halloween candy treats last night? I bet you did.
I did. The rain held off. It was great. And so all of my neighbors think that I can't just predict the weather. Now I can control it, because we have like this wave of like adult trick-or-treaters that come about an hour after like the regular kids, and the rain came in and just totally ruined it for them. And all the kids got to clean up on the candy. So
that is a really good idea. We need more of that. I asked my 15-year-old, where's all your candy? He said, "Oh, I don't like candy. I gave it all away."
Yeah,
I'm like,
well, there you go.
what?
Wow.
This is a revolting development.
What's the matter with
here.
you? Wow.
Yeah,
Goodness.
but I noticed the same thing, Neil. Last night, you had the little kids, and the ballerina dresses, early and everything, and then you had the 15-year-old come by and say trick or treat.
Well, what kills me are all these people that get caught on the Nest cams. Like if you just leave like a big bowl of candy out,
They
if you're
dump
not
it
gonna
off
be
in the
there.
bag.
And the parents are the ones that are stealing it, not the kids. What is wrong with these people? It's frightening. What have we come to?
Oh,
I don't know. Jen, what have we come to?
I have no idea. I wasn't here, so I'm really
I'm with you, Jen.
humbuggish on Halloween. No, Halloween is my mom's birthday, so I always spend Halloween with her. So that's what we did. We had a family dinner, and my brother cooked steaks and sweet potatoes and salad. So we did that for her yesterday. That was fun.
Awesome.
My 15-year-old and his girlfriend came home with these costumes of sharks. They were sharks. And I took one look at them and I said, "Y'all are the land sharks." And they looked at me like I was nuts. And I said, "Y'all never heard of the land sharks?" And they're like, "No." But you have to go back to the original land shark skits on Saturday Night Live. Were in 1975.
Really?
And it was really funny. And I played it for them on YouTube and they loved it. But they had never heard of the land shark. And I thought, I'm just getting really, really old. That's hard to believe. That was 47 years ago.
Wow.
And it seems like yesterday.
Time flies. See,
does.
James A is back at work after a vacation week. How's things at the TV station?
Yeah, they're doing pretty good. We're just kind of plowing along. I've got beautiful 79 degrees here today for the high, and I'm hoping that Rick keeps the weather all on his side of the state Friday, but it looks like we may have some QLCS fun Friday.
Yeah, I saw that big risk on the day 4. It's always fun when you're in a day 4. So QLCS fun. Let's see if we can get Kim on the line here. Kim, are you working and hearing us?
I am. I restarted the computer. It might be that my computer is possessed by gremlins now, but we'll just take this as it comes. You guys let me know if I turn into some kind of alien creature on the show tonight. Right now, though, I think I'm okay. It's good to see you all. And we had a fun time with Halloween here because in Norman, the National Weather Center opens up for all of the children of employees of the building. And it's always my favorite thing every year. And we haven't gotten to do it the last 2 years. Yeah. So my youngest had never, my middle child had never seen the inside of the building before. She hadn't gotten to do it. And she was born during the first COVID year. So we got to take all 3 and go around and see all the other kids that I've missed growing up. And it was just really, really, really wonderful. We got pictures of all 3 of them in front of all the Twister props, because that's one of the things I'm trying to do as they grow up, get, the succession of pictures in front of that stuff that we have there. So it was a really, really good day.
Okay, now I'm going to stop everybody, James, because now I got this text from Neil. And he says, I've got to share my laptop loose screw story tonight at some point. I can't wait.
Let's do it right now. Do not burn down. People.
I mean, what
you don't tease people on the internet.
I'll share my loose screw in my head story sometime.
Oh, Harry James.
We have enough time for that story.
Wow.
Hey, Neil.
Go.
All right. So true story. I wouldn't have been able to join last week, whether I wanted to or not. I was mid-sentence typing something in the middle of the afternoon and my computer just shuts off. And I use a Mac. I couldn't reboot it in safe mode. I couldn't get any activity whatsoever. So I take it to the Mac store down in Charleston and we take the back off and the guy bypasses the battery to try to get any kind of signal. And he's like, it's hopeless. We did everything we could. And I've had them like crash where I can boot them up in safe mode. But I was totally hosed. Now, fortunately, it started acting flaky and shut off on me once of the week before. So I started backing it up. So I had backed up data. So that was good. But I get back to my mom's house and I was like, you know what? I've got this compressed can of alcohol. Maybe I'll just go in and like blast out some dust and do like one last sort of Hail Mary. And I looked down at the motherboard. I had the back off, and I was like, you know what? There's like a hole where a screw's supposed to be, and it's not there. And so I started looking around, and one of these tiny little screws came out, and it was magnetized, and it worked its way down and like stuck to the side of this chip.
Ooh.
And I guess shorted it out or something. So I just thought, well, I'll put it back in there and see what happens. So I screwed the screw back in where it was supposed to be, rebooted my computer, and it came right up with no error message or anything, but the entire LCD was fried. So I copied off what I was working on.
Yeah.
And then it took me like a week to get another laptop. So I'm testing out Zoom for the first time on my new laptop. And so then the guy at the Genius Bar was totally stumped. I mean, I felt like it was like Stump the Chump in there, and they were just like, we've never seen something we couldn't answer. So I called him back up.
So I'm going to say Neil is the NWP czar and also an Apple genius.
Yeah.
And he has another title on his.
I thought he was going to tell us like half of South Carolina burned. So I didn't know, if it gotten really nasty. So I knew I hadn't heard anything.
He's got our first show title there. The guy at the Genius Bar was stumped.
Yeah, there you go.
I called him back up. I said, you know what? Just check for missing parts and loose screws. Like when you guys are putting stuff back together, if you have any spare parts like laying around after you're done, because this screw, I think what it was the screw was actually part of the grounding, because it had some metal around where it fits in, and so the circuit board knew it wasn't grounded. And you never know. So it's always one of those things where you tighten all the screws, and if that doesn't work, beat it against the floor. You never know. Back up your stuff first, by the way.
I think Neil ought to run the Genius Bar. What do you think?
No kidding.
He probably could. Yeah, I've got a related story, not a loose screw, but we went down to Hurricane Katrina. I went with Brian Peters, and we covered the storm, and we spent a couple of days basically on the beach in Mississippi and then in Alabama with the wind and blowing like crazy, and posting on the blog and doing all these updates. And I get back to the Hampton Inn, that Monday night after everything's moved on out, and my computer will not start. And I thought, So I get back to Birmingham. I call Dell, and they send out a person, and they're working on it for a few minutes. And he goes, Mr. Murray, have you been to the beach recently? And I was like, yeah, I just spent the weekend down there. And they were like, well, your computer is full of sand. And sure enough, he dumped it out, and there was like enough sand to make a small beach. And it had just all come through the air. So I guess if you're covering a hurricane, you better be wearing a mask, because your lungs are probably full of sand before these things are over with. You don't even know it, because I don't think that computer ever went out of the van the entire time we were there. What are you thinking, Troy? What's going on in that brain?
I think you had the laptop out in the sand, is what I think.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay, yeah. All right. Well, I just didn't remember that. So anyway, so James, you want me to bring our guest in?
Yeah, well, I was going to have Neil real quick. What do you got? Some Apple Silicon there? You got an M2? What you got?
So I've got a couple that this sounds crazy, but I run all the UFS stuff on different laptops. And so right now I'm on an M1 MacBook Pro. I've got two different versions of this, one with a ton of RAM and the other one that I just use for internet fun stuff. And to be honest, I can't see a difference. So I don't know if maybe the code doesn't scale as well as it should, or maybe Apple's just over promoting their extra memory.
Yeah, cool. All right. I'm still on an old Intel Mac from 2019. All right. Yeah, Bill, let's bring in our guest here before he runs and hangs up and screams.
Yeah, James. So tonight's Guest WeatherBrains appearance was nearly canceled after the guest booking officer took a look at our guest Twitter account, found an inordinate amount of references to the greatness of Tennessee volunteer football these days. But I had to tell myself, SEC, keep the appearance. He is the Science and Operations Officer at the National Weather Service in Jackson, Kentucky. Dustin Jordan, welcome to WeatherBrains.
Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I'd be welcome on the program if you went snooze or looking around on my Twitter or Facebook there. But yeah, I'm glad to be here. I don't know if I'm going to be welcome back in Eastern Kentucky. Actually, now that you mentioned that.
Yeah, after last week, that's probably true. So, James has never had a reason to play Rocky Top on this show because Tennessee's never been relevant in 15 years. So this year, so James, I guess you can play Rocky Top finally.
Yes, no, it's not even in my soundboard.
Probably don't even have it in the soundboard. I'm afraid you may have to correct that.
I'm guessing Nick Saban told you to take it out of there, right, on your last podcast.
Yeah. Nick might listen to this show. He's a weather dweeb. I mean, you never know.
That's cool.
That's funny too, because I have a story from the hotel business in 1986. Yeah, it would have been 85. Alabama stayed at the Sheridan Perimeter for the first time ever because the hotel was brand new. And so they were staying there for all the games. So the first game was Tennessee. And I decorated everything in red balloons. And the general manager came out of his office. And he goes, "Where's all the Tennessee balloons?" And I'm like, "You're the headquarters hotel for Alabama. You don't need any Tennessee balloons." He made me put up orange and white balloons too. And Ray Perkins and the Alabama team rolled up, walked in the front door and saw those balloons. And I've never seen a human being as angry as that little man was. And the next thing I know, I'm on a giant ladder taking down all the orange and white balloons. But there was never another balloon that was not red or white in that hotel as long as Alabama was staying there. So anyway, I'm real mad at you tonight, Dustin, because we moved this show from last night to tonight. And you should have told us you're at the Sioux meeting and you're missing the Sioux dinner.
Oh, that's okay.
Time with us tonight. We feel really, really special.
No. This is a Southeast Sioux meeting. So in the different regions, a lot of times you'll have like a sub region of your of Siouxs or WCMs, and so we're meeting in Paducah. So I'm in Paducah, Kentucky tonight.
Well, talk about the role of a Sioux for a minute. We've had bunches of Siouxs on, and it's always interesting to hear it again. What that role is about. Why is we've got some Oompa Loompas and some funny stuff going over in the chat.
I see it rolling through.
These people need to share, but talk about the role of a Sioux for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Sioux is really, it's the science and operations officer, so really heavily operations focused. I'm focused on getting all the new training in there that people can use, especially all the new research that's out there. There's just so much that's coming out. It's amazing time to be a meteorologist. I feel like there's so many new things coming out, so many new techniques to help us with warnings and operations in general, and with forecast builder that many of you may not even know what that is. We're really changing and revolutionizing the way we're doing the forecasting process. And so I think in a lot of training, I'm involved in a lot of training, make sure our staff know. And I'm also involved with our new folks that come on staff, helping get them trained up so that they can get involved in operations fast. And we move them fast into operations now, faster than we used to. I'm sure you, Rick Smith there remembers the intern days and things like that. I came in as an intern and it was like, oh, go over there and sit and answer some phones initially, but I got in the forecast process really fast. I started out my career in Caribou, Maine. And so that was really cool experience and got in the forecast process quick there. But it really, the role of the forecaster is changing. But that's really one of the greatest things about being in the Sioux position is I get to see all this change and kind of see it through and build that office culture around it.
Bill, I just got to say, we've had a lot of Siouxs on here. We need to get some more WCMs on here. I think I'm going to start pushing to have our job title changed to warning coordination officer. It's just not fair that they get the cool officer at the end of their name. So anyway, that's my mission for the rest.
Do you both get badges if that happens? Because that'd be awesome.
They probably have badges. They don't let me see them though.
We don't need no badges.
Rick, the best part though, you're written into law. That's the cool thing about WCM.
That's good and bad, I think. But we love Sioux.
you could just pick up a plastic badge at the local toy store. It works for Herschel Walker. It should work for y'all, I would think. So that's pretty cool. So you mentioned being an intern. Talk about your career journey, educationally and through onto the Weather Service, because you actually did a stint in the Air Force before you were in the Weather Service, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. I started out my I shouldn't say my career, because I didn't actually do meteorology in the Air Force. I was actually a instrument and flight control technician. So I worked on an aircraft. That was my job in the Air Force. So I got to work on instruments and things on an AC-130U model gunship. So I was based out of Herbert Field, Florida, which is near Fort Walton Beach, Florida. So spent about 3 years down there shortly after high school. And then I had a decision to make. Am I going to stay in the Air Force and do this or do weather? Or I always wanted to be a meteorologist. And so I had the chance to, I was like, I got to make a choice. And I got out and decided to pursue my career in meteorology. And one of the funny things is a connection to this show is you guys started your show in 2006, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember actually listening to your guys' podcast as I was getting out of the Air Force and being, and starting to get my interest back into meteorology. And so, appreciate you guys for having this podcast for so long. There's actually a connection there, but yeah. So then I went back to college, got my degree in meteorology from Western Kentucky University, where I was able to do some student volunteer work at Morristown, Tennessee. And then so after that, I was able to get up to Caribou, Maine. That was where my first position was there, and really enjoyed my stint there. I was there for almost 2 years. And then I've been at Jackson, Kentucky since 2014. So
that's pretty cool, because Caribou would have to have been a fun place to be. I remember there was a book when I was a kid in the library, and it talked about, being a meteorologist. And the first chapter was about a morning shift at the Weather Bureau in Caribou, Maine. And I always thought that sounded so cool. And you actually went there and did it. Talk about that time, Dustin.
Yeah, it was a great time. We really, me and my wife enjoyed it. It was a little bit of a struggle for us. We just got married in July or June. Sorry, I almost messed that up. June 2nd, 2012. And here we go off to Caribou, Maine in November of 2012. And that was a shock. Let me tell you, because it's immediately cold. And if you hear a beeping in the background, I don't know, there's a truck out here, so who knows what's going on. But anyway, we went up there and not knowing what I was getting myself into, really, to be honest with you. I had worked a little bit in the Weather Service as a volunteer. We grew to love it. It was a lot of fun, a lot of winter. You have to really get used to the winter and get used to getting out during the winter. That's one of the things, that's really where I learned about really seasonal affect disorder and how that can affect you. I think there were times up there that I got actually affected by that a little bit, and learned a lot about that and a lot about myself and how you really have to have that sun to keep you going.
So James Spann, do you know what county Caribou, Maine is in?
No, negative.
The county. It's the county. It's the county.
Jen Airmore, you have a knowing look on your face. Do you know what county?
I think is it Oristook?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Is she pronouncing it correctly?
I probably said it. I butchered it. Yeah.
No, you're fine. Yeah. Yeah. It's no worse. There's one place there called Mattawamkeag, and nobody ever gets that thing right. So.
Oh my God.
So Dustin, were you always interested in weather, or did it come late in life?
No, I've always been interested in weather. My aunt was actually afraid of thunderstorms, and so I got to watch a lot of the Weather Channel. Got exposed to weather really early in my life. And so it was always interesting to me, though. I was always interested in how all this stuff worked. And really what got me was the blizzard of 93. I was a kid in third grade and I had never seen that much snow in my life. And I was just so amazed. And then also during that event, we had a thunder snow. And that's really what fascinated me. I was like, how are we getting thunder out of this? That is just so cool. And, really set my path. I never really strayed from it, even though I went to the Air Force and did something different for a little while. I never really strayed from it, and that's why I came back.
So anybody else have a story about a relative who got them interested in weather because they were afraid of it? I know I had one. My mama Murray in North Birmingham was petrified of storms. James, it must have been those tornadoes in the late 50s, McDonald's Chapel, all those big tornadoes that moved through Jefferson County, because if it came what she called a cloud, we were in the crawl space under the house, and I couldn't think of a more frightening place to be than that. Anybody else have a similar story on the panel?
I was the one that was scared in my family.
Yeah, I learned to be scared
Same here.
real quick.
Yeah, I feel like it's usually that you're afraid. So having a family member that's afraid, that's an interesting twist. I don't hear nearly as much. My mom was extremely weather savvy, but she didn't have any formal training, but knew so much that when we did have severe weather in Northern Illinois, she would correctly identify features. And it was enough for me as a kid to be scared myself because it all sounded terrifying. But she wasn't afraid until, crap was hitting the fan and she had a reason to be afraid. There was one time we were driving from a nearby suburb back to home, and we drove into a storm to get there, and there was hail, and I remember the windows fogging up, and my mother was in the front seat, Catholic woman sitting there praying Hail Marys, and my brother and I were sitting in the back seat just like, what are you even saying? Like we didn't even know what she was talking. Like, what are you doing? That's our mom losing it. And she had her window rolled down because the windows were fogged, and she was trying to equalize everything. So the hail was just falling in my lap, and I was like, cool, all right. And then so yeah, I was terrified when she became scared, and I had no idea how she was reacting. That was scary.
Well, wow.
Go ahead. The term coming up a cloud or coming a cloud. Yeah. That takes me right back. And I think my mom was scared, but I was petrified of storms. And you mentioned the crawl space. I think the prospect, we had a full basement under the house. I think I was more terrified of the prospect of having to go down in that dark basement in a storm than I was of the storm itself. But man, it lasted until my early teens. Probably it was terrible.
Tell us about your grandma, Neil.
Oh, she was super scared of tornadoes. So she was from like the Washington, Georgia, Athens, Georgia area, and was absolutely petrified of any line of dark clouds. And then of course my mom, because of her mom being scared. Yeah. My dad had to counteract that by acting like he wasn't scared of anything. And so we lived throughout Florida, down in Miami. Actually, we lived in Fort Walton Beach for a while. I got a funny Fort Walton Beach story. My dad was in the Air Force too. And so he would never want to evacuate for hurricanes. Like, we'll be fine. But so to sort of calibrate his threat perspective, we used to go deer hunting on the bombing range out by Hurlburt. And I remember out there one day, I was like, wow.
Is that legal, Neil?
Back in like the late 70s and 80s. And I was like, well, are you worried about this sign that says, watch out for unexploded ordnances? Like, just don't pick up anything.
That is so funny. It's funny because my mother was the opposite. She was totally not afraid of weather. And there was one thing you didn't stand in between her and that was her 3:30 Friday afternoon beauty shop appointment. And I remember driving over the hill. James Spann knows where this is, North Birmingham on 31, and hearing them say on wide radio that there was a tornado warning. There was a tornado on the ground in Fultondale. Well, I knew enough to know that we were going through Fultondale to get to this beauty shop. And I look up, and sure enough, the darn tornado is crossing the highway, and this woman is still driving. And I nearly got out of the car on the 31 highway bridge. I was screaming and yelling, and she was like, "The tornado's already gone through. We're just gonna, it's already passed. We're gonna be fine." And we drove through the debris. And I'm like, we're not even gonna stop and help the poor people here.
Well, she was a woman on her way. She had places to go. I have that reminds me of my mother would have been really similar. She was similar. Really, what she would do is get us all down in the basement, and then she would go back upstairs and be plastered to the window looking outside. And I was terrified of this. And I was the little like sheepdog person who was like, everyone has to be together. And I would go back up. I remember one time I went back up to go get her, and she's looking out the window, and there was undoubtedly it was a funnel cloud. Like I looked up and saw, the rotation, and I mean it could have been that it was like the leading edge of a gust front, maybe, or a gust NATO or something, but it was very, very tight rotation. And she was just standing there looking at it like, and she was ready to duck and go down to the basement steps if she needed to, but I was not okay with how interested she was in all of this. And it's interesting for me now as a mother, probably I'll be similar, right? But one of the things that she was upset by is she wanted us to all go and just be in the basement so that she could do her weather thing. And there, like I was leaving and coming back up, and she wasn't okay with me being there, but she was fine doing it. Now my children are doing something similar where I'll tell them to go do something, and I'll want to go look at whatever the hazard is or whatever the exciting thing is. They will not go until all the kids are accounted for and we're accounted for. They're doing the exact same thing that I did. And it is such a like fun killer. but I mean, they're serving an important role, but I'm like, come on guys, mommy knows what she's doing, but you guys need to all be safe. It's so funny how these things cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, that's how it works. And my aunt lived in a manufactured home, I guess we call them a trailer back then, near Brilliant, Alabama. And so, there were no warnings that you knew of in the early 70s. At least you couldn't get them in the middle of the night in backwoods Alabama. And so she would hang out one end of the trailer, and my mother would hang out the other end, and they would yell back and forth their observations of what was coming. And I just thought that's
better than dual Doppler.
They were as good as dual Doppler games in some of those areas, but I was kind of like you. I was more afraid that we would have to go and get in the storm pit, because that's another Alabama term, and that storm pit was frightening. It was full of snakes and spiders and no telling what else, and so. I just thank God the super outbreak came in 1974, and I didn't have to be scared of these things anymore. Because after that night, I was baptized. I was baptized, Dustin, and I was ready to go. But anyway, I don't know how we went down this rabbit hole. But any other rabbit holes we need to explore before we get back on track here?
My parents are very big on everything being normal. And December 5th, 1975, we have a tornado out of an LP supercell that dropped debris in our neighborhood. The tornado sirens sound. And of course, my parents, like the good Oklahomans that Kim and Rick know, immediately went to the porch while we continued watching Gilligan's Island. And they came in both wide-eyed, and I thought, something's wrong. And into the bathroom we were herded. But,
yeah, there was that term when you were told, put your shoes on, kids. There was nothing good that ever came out of that.
Yeah. What's interesting about my aunt is she was just afraid of just more severe thunderstorm warnings, or she would go down as soon as a severe thunderstorm warning was issued. So she was just and I don't know what the stem of that was. I'm not really sure. I never really learned that growing up as to why she was like that. She grew up in South Carolina, and so maybe something happened there, in her childhood, but she was terrified.
Yeah, and that really impacts the kids, that's for sure. So don't let me miss anything good over here in the chat. Please jump in, panel. I know we got lots of good things that show up, and I'm not filtering very well. Kim, you look like you're ready to filter.
Yeah, sorry. I was just sharing based on everything you guys are saying, like you're describing people who are very in tune with their environment, very aware of what's going on, not complacent to the threat, but they're making decisions maybe to not shelter immediately. This is why I have been a huge advocate. This is part of why I've been a huge advocate for when the Weather Service is considering having societal performance metrics, and this is something being contemplated actually right now explicitly in law that's being formulated. that we can't have something like the actual sheltering behavior be a thing that is our goal or the thing that we're measured by, because we can't make people do that. Well, all that we can do is try to inform their decision making, maybe encourage response, but ultimately what people do is totally not in the control of the National Weather Service. And everything you guys are saying right now is why.
Yeah.
So what do you say to that, Dustin? I mean, Kim always knows how to get us back onto the true academic track. So well.
I know.
So now that we're back on track, take that and run with it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, Kim. I mean, I think our area of Eastern Kentucky obviously has its fair share of manufactured housing. People who are don't have a high income, they can't afford to have some of these things in place that might make it easier for them to get out. And that's something we're always looking at. I know I believe it was Kevin Strader, is it Dr. Strader, that came out with that paper talking about and you guys had him on your show, and he called Jackson, Kentucky a sleeper. Because when we have tornadoes in Jackson, in our CWA, people are probably not, there's going to be some fatalities, right? There's going to be some major impacts to our area. And so, and then the other Jacksons, like they've got tornadoes all the time. I believe you had their Sue on here not too long ago, but they got, they're always having tornadoes in a very, very, poor and underserved population, if you will. I believe, as we're moving into that realm. And so I think that's something we're looking at, at our office for sure, is, how can we help in those areas, especially when it comes to, flooding. Flooding's kind of, why Jackson, Kentucky's here. And that's what we deal with, a lot more flooding than we do tornadoes. And of course, we've had our fair share, but I think, I agree with you, Kim, in that, it would be really hard to measure things on how people, react, because everybody's going to make different decisions. And I've listened to your guys' show, and I'm always like, man, it is so hard to get people to make all the same decision, right? I mean, there's all kinds of factors that we just can't measure that are going to make people make different decisions, whether it be, I need a second opinion. I need to look out and see what's going on. I need to, have all of these different things that are, in your decision-making process. They're different based on so many outside factors. How you were brought up could be, how you make those decisions. If you're terrified of storms, you might react much faster than somebody who is interested in storms, like your mom, Kim. She hung around and looked, right, for longer, but she wasn't willing to put you in harm's way. So it would be very difficult for that to be a metric.
Dustin, when was the last big outbreak for National Weather Service Jackson? I know in 2012 there was, early March was pretty huge.
Yeah, that's probably the last big outbreak that most people remember, is 2012. That of course, had several large tornadoes, that caused people to be, pretty panicky in our CWA. They had never seen a lot of that stuff. That was certainly a generational tornado event. As I went around Eastern Kentucky talking to different schools and people, that's the event they remember. That's the pinnacle event for them. Most of them remember that. Now the kids don't nowadays, but certainly the teachers, all remember that event because of just how impactful it was across our area.
Yeah, keep exploring that event for a second, Jen, because you obviously know about it, and Dustin, you obviously know a lot about it. So tell us more.
Well, it was March 2nd and 3rd, I believe, 2012. Started.
How does she do this? It's like a photographic memory.
No, I don't.
What is this?
No. That's not me. That's my boys. I don't. My Tornado Talk crew. I do
chipmunks.
not have those.
Yeah.
But this one I remember because it was 2 days before my birthday, and my dad was on his way down to visit me in Georgia, and he actually got caught up. He goes, "I think I just drove through a tornado," and it was in Eastern Tennessee when he was making his way down I-75. But I remember this because of the Henryville event. And then West Liberty was another, that was an EF3. But I don't know much about the tornadoes that move beyond that into your area, Dustin. So can you talk about what was the highest rated there?
That was the EF3 in West
Okay.
Liberty. West Liberty,
West Liberty was yours.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was probably our largest. There was also one in Salyersville to the south of that one that was pretty long track tornado. But yeah, see, that's the thing that's interesting about those days that you bring up, because Henryville really probably took a lot of the spotlight off of the fact that we had, tornado, and other places had tornadoes during that event, because the Henryville was a much bigger story, I believe, if I remember right, because I believe that one hit a school, right? I believe in Henryville, so that one really took a lot of the story. But and may have been, that one may have been rated a 4 in Henryville. I'm not sure on that, but yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so yeah, it took a lot of the story, but certainly, yeah, West Liberty, Salyersville were probably two of our biggest during that event. We had some smaller ones, obviously some very large hail and supercells that we just typically don't get here in Eastern Kentucky. It was pretty incredible to see that much, those kinds of storms here in our state. This was before I got here, but of course, that was one of the things I had to read up on pretty fast as I was going out and doing talks and hearing the people talk about it. And talking to, I talked to one of the emergency managers, and she was just telling me, she was the West Liberty, actually. She was the emergency manager there for that county. And she was in West Liberty when it hit. And she told me exactly where she went and all those things. And that was just a really impactful story for me to hear, as as one of the younger meteorologists at the time, like, wow, that's, this is, what we're here for. And of course, in Salyersville, you can actually still see some of the damage from the trees, I believe, that came down. I think some of it's kind of getting back to normal, obviously, since, we're talking 10 years now. But, for a while there, you could actually see where there was still, tree damage and things like that.
Was that the outbreak where the tornado came near Colonel Sanders' boyhood home, or where he grew up, or something like that?
Man, I'm not sure on that. I would have to.
Dan, you should know.
I don't recall that.
Yeah, all right. Well, maybe
I don't recall that. Yeah.
I've got food on the brain tonight. No Long John Silver's in Birmingham, James Spann, but we still have Captain D's.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Have some Captain D's for
good
dinner.
Chocolate cake there. Have you ever had the chocolate cake there, Phil?
Nah, I didn't know that, Dustin. I should have talked to you before I ordered Captain D's.
Yeah. That's right.
You're killing me, Smell, says Jim. That's exactly right. If we don't have a Caddyshack reference from now on in every show, that'll be a really sad situation. But you were a Hilltopper. You went to Western Kentucky, Dustin, and of course the December 10th outbreak hit the university hard. I think there even was a student who passed away during the tornado, but it maybe was in off-campus housing or something. But talk about the December 10th outbreak and that impact there on your alma mater, and how much it evolved before it got into your part of Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, we were really lucky on the eastern side of the state that we really didn't get impacted nearly as much from this. I think we issued a couple of tornado warnings. I don't think there were actually any confirmed on that. I think there was just some, some signals that maybe we're going to have something out of these, and they've been producing tornadoes up to that point. But we were lucky, that we didn't have to survey anything in our CWA. But yeah, certainly this was something I was watching very close. We were actually kind of just talking about that today, since I'm here in Paducah. And I was talking about the fact that I remember that day, I remember looking in Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas, and saying, man, that could be the storm of the day, but I'm not thinking long track at this point, but I'm thinking, that could be a pretty dangerous storm. It's in the right spot, for the setup and what was going on. And actually going back to that, I hate, in these setups when you look at it and you just know. And I remember telling our Southeast Sioux, I remember going, man, there's probably going to be 1 or 2 long track tornadoes. That was the day before, just looking at the setup, and you hate being right in these situations. You hate it because, you just know. And the messaging was great, right? I mean, from the SPC down to the local level, but and Bill Bunting, all those people did a great job over there at SPC. I just couldn't believe, how predictable some of these events are becoming, and we're doing so well with that. But still, when you've got these kinds of long track tornadoes on the ground at night, it's just scary. It's just scary. And, I watched that storm, and I remember coming back and seeing, man, this storm's, there's a tornado there. Coming back and going, wow, it's still on the ground. How long has this been going on? Then I go away and come back and it's still on the ground. And I remember sitting there, I'm fixing to go to bed and, not going to be able to sleep very well, wondering what's going to happen in our CWA that night. Cause I'm like, well, I don't know how much sleep I'm going to get here, but I'm going to try to catch some sleep. But I remember sitting there with my wife going, this is about to hit some pretty decent sized towns. And I was like, and you hate to say that people are going, there's going to be fatalities, and it. You just know it. And, so those impact you, I think, even though you're watching from afar, just like watching your guys', event. I remember watching that in college, and watching that, watching James's coverage of that event and thinking, man, this is just not good. This is just not, and it hits you, it impacts you differently. And certainly the WKU, now that's an interesting storm. And actually it's interesting because the warning forecaster is actually out here in Paducah that issued the warnings for that Bowling Green tornado. But talking to him and seeing it on radar, I mean, that was a really tough storm to warn on and to kind of understand what was going on there. There were multiple mesocyclones, if I remember, with that storm. And it was just a really messy storm because it wasn't a true, supercell by this point. It's kind of some sort of hybrid thing. I don't even know how to describe what exactly that storm was, but it was very hybrid. Very dangerous storm, and watching where it was going, I was like, wow, I can't believe WKU's campus could get hit tonight. I'm thinking, this is going to be very close, call. And then, hearing about the student, which I believe was an apartment complex off campus there, I believe is where that fatality was, so it just, again, it rings to the fact that we've still got a lot of work to do, and Kim knows this from the social science perspective, right? We're trying to figure it out, but it's the results are not going to be fast, right? It's going to take us a while, especially since we're just now kind of getting on board this idea that, social scientists have to be, embedded within our processes and embedded within what we're doing from an outreach perspective. So, that's my take on it.
Yeah, that night was terrifying for me, being here and having hotels in Kentucky, because we had been alerting them, all week. And, I got the call on Friday. Is it going to be as bad as they're saying? No, it's going to be worse. Yeah. And then, Lola, silly girl, I think I just found something my dog likes. Captain D's. She's very excited about it. So, but that night was just terrifying. And so I don't know, have any of y'all seen the new show on Netflix, the Earth Storm series? Have you watched the tornado one yet? They have Brandon Clement and Brett Adair. You got to watch this because a lot of it's about Kentucky. Because apparently, Brett was there chasing that night and, caught some really dramatic video of this tornado backlit with lightning, and Brandon was right there with his drone right after the storm, and it brought back a lot of terrible memories. And we're gonna have is it Trent Okrent? Is that right? I may have messed up the name, but he's gonna join us in a couple of weeks. I guess it's actually about 6 weeks from now when we get close to the anniversary, and he's carried on there very prominently. And I know he's going to talk heavily about, their messaging that night, and, the impact of that storm, on the mental health of every week. We always come back around to this now, the impacts on mental health on the forecasters and the broadcasters and the people that are closely involved with it. It's terrifying.
Yeah, we're taking that a lot more seriously in the Weather Service now too, which is a nice thing to see. I think that was born out of the 2011 outbreak probably, and just what came of that, and I think, that really, helps a lot. So.
I don't mean to laugh, but we have some real comedians here in the chat. I don't know if Rick will want to say that or not. I'll give him a pass if he wants to let that one just live in chat.
I haven't watched the Earthstorm series, but we did work extensively with them back. I don't know. It was probably a year or so ago. It was before the Kentucky outbreak happened. So understandably, a lot of what we got to talk about got bumped. But anyway, I'm looking forward to watching it. And I think, are there 4 episodes? There's like
there's
a
one
tornado or
volcanoes
hurricane
we watched, which is fascinating.
Yeah, I'm definitely.
I think we haven't seen the hurricane one yet. We started, binge watching last night the tornado one, and that morphed easily into the volcano one. So I think we got hurricanes, and I guess there's probably Rick, earthquakes still to go. Maybe is that the other one, or I'm not even sure. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's a really good show, and they have a British announcer, Kim, on the show, and I don't know if that makes it seem smarter, or if they just wanted to balance these chasers from Alabama and Louisiana, with our southern draws.
I have some interesting experience working with these British film crews. There's some crews that are just based in the UK that do filming for outfits like, very common science outfits like Nova. And when I was a grad student, I didn't know that that's how this worked. There was one, Pioneer Productions, which doesn't sound like something in the UK, sounds very much like a US-based company. They were coming out to do some filming right after 2011. And I was a grad student at the time. I had done my research out in Alabama, met all of you, and then had come back and was digesting my findings. And we'd had tornadoes in Oklahoma too. So in 2011, we had just 30 minutes south and west of us in Chickasha. We had this big tornado that had ripped through, and we had this big tornado damage path. And they wanted someone to drive through the path, and they'd ask questions, about behavioral science as I went. And I said, that's a weird ask, but okay, I'll do this. And I went through the whole thing. And they were all British, and I thought, well, this is so cute. What do British people know about tornadoes? Like, I'm just going to tell you whatever baseline thing, and it'll be great. We filmed for like 2 hours with me doing this, and let me tell you, it's hard to keep tornado damage out of the window when it's going at a 45-degree angle to all of the north, south, east, west oriented roads, and you're just driving and like trying to say intelligent things, and they're like hanging out the window with their camera. It was great. It turned out though that they were filming for Nova, and I didn't know that until they had me sign the release form, and I went, oh God, I don't know what I said. This is great. But I did ultimately get in on it. But it is funny, Rick, how these things work. And Bill, to your point, you never really know who's going to be narrating the program when you're filmed for this stuff. It's kind of a black box a little bit, and you don't know if your stuff will end up being included. You don't know what their angle will be exactly. I think it'll be interesting to see. I haven't seen the full Earthstorm episode, but I saw a little bit of how it started. There is a little bit of controversy about it in the chase community because of the portrayal of storm chasers that they chose. And so, that's a caution, cautionary tale to people who get involved with the media. Sometimes you like how they portray you, and sometimes you might not. I don't know, Rick. It might be. It's unfortunate that you spent your time in. Yeah.
It was during the pandemic, and we had to get special permission to go to the building. So it was just nice to be able to go to the office. So, I sat in the atrium for 3 hours. It was fine. But yeah, you talk about Pioneer Productions. It's interesting. And Dustin, you may have encountered this at some point. You just never know what's going to happen to that video. They'll come in and shoot video or B-roll of the office or something. When we used to have the Weather Channel on in the office all the time, I would walk by and I would be on the screen, and they'd be talking about the La Plata, Maryland tornado. They just put B-roll in wherever they need it from different offices. So I don't know. Once you sit down and record an interview or give B-roll, then who knows where it's going to end up. So there may still be hope. Maybe my part of my interview will air sometime. Maybe in the earthquake episode. Who knows?
Oh, the very logical place for it to go. That's for sure. So, Jen Nermore, I think we should just sell memberships to the chat. I think
Yes.
we would finally find a way to make money with WeatherBrains.
I think so. I think it's fantastic. Yes, from the puns to the jokes to the wine glasses, that was great.
Yeah, so Rick has already christened our newest segment, which is just 5 minutes of James reading off all of his puns from the chat reel, because this man is going to take Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon or Seth Meyers' job one day. I think, Dr. Neal, he's good at these puns.
Bedtime is way too early for that.
So we talked about the December 10th event, but of course the biggest event in recency for you, Dustin, is the big flooding in late July. Talk about that. That's just a horrible, horrible event, and going back and looking at some of the video, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's still fresh, for me. I can still just remember, kind of what was going on, leading into that event. I didn't know how big this was going to be. Obviously, you don't really know, kind of in that moment. I was taking interviews. Our WCM was out, so I became I got christened as the WCM there pretty fast, as I was trying to take all the, kind of some of these interviews and things like that off of our staff in operations, so that they're just kind of able to focus on the forecast process out there and getting out the watches and the warnings. And so, so I was taking interviews, kind of before that event, talking a little bit about what was going on. And I remember, this is the one thing I remember in my interview that I wish I could take back, which was I talked, they tell you in all this media training, you need to kind of go back to kind of, some safety or something at the end, right? And so you're trying to think, okay, what am I going to say here? And I'm talking about turn around, don't drown, right? And spent some time on that. This all happened at night, and so, yeah, turn around, don't drown is important, right? But it was at night. And so I think my message would have been just get to higher ground at that point. That was the real message in this situation, I think, is getting to higher ground, because people didn't have time to worry about, getting, in their car and going anywhere at that point in a lot of these cases. But yeah, most of the leading up to that event, we had flood watches out. We had a lot of rain leading into what would be kind of the pinnacle of that event, which was, which was the 28th, I believe. Everything runs through your head as you're coming into these events, but yeah, it kind of all culminated then. And I remember we were thinking about, well, where are things going to be? Where are things going to set up? It was really unclear what was going to happen in this event, but we knew. We had a lot of rain headed into it. We were compromised in terms of flash flood guidance. It was very low at the time. So we were looking at all that information, and WPC had us in, or Weather Prediction Center had us in a moderate risk for flash flooding, which is pretty rare. I mean, in terms of, getting that. And we had a pretty consecutive days of being in slide to moderate risk. And so, leading into that, I did not know, though, what the extent was going to be, what was actually going to happen. I remember going to bed and knowing that I had to be at work the next morning and thinking, okay, I'll get up and we'll see what happened, overnight and all that stuff. So I didn't actually know what had happened. I was kind of, getting woken up and going into the office. I get a text from my boss, and he says, am I MIC? And he says, hey, you're going to need to get to work as soon as you can, because otherwise you're not going to make it into the office. And I'm like, wow, okay, this has kind of changed my pace, that morning, because I still haven't kind of caught up to what had happened overnight. And so he said, bring food. And I don't even know what that means. I'm like, so I am grabbing all this food, and trying to bring it in, and not knowing what that meant. And, what the funny thing is on that is I didn't think about any clothes. I don't know how long I'm going to be there, because we can get stuck at our office, and I've been stuck there before. But in this case, it was like, okay, I got to go. I don't really have time to think. And I remember telling my wife, I don't know when I'm going to be home. I don't know what I'm going into. And so I'm driving down the road. I'm trying to get kind of caught up on what's going on, but I'm not calling the office because I know there's a lot of moving parts. I don't know what's, I don't really want to bother them at that point. But I'm driving and I'm kind of thinking of decisions, and I'm thinking, man, maybe I'll pick up some food on the way in. And I get to Jackson, and there's a distinct smell in flooding. I don't know if any of you've ever, maybe this is only in Eastern Kentucky, but there's a distinct smell that comes with flooding. And when you get to when I got to closer to Jackson, I started smelling the flooding smell. And I was like, oh man, what has happened? I know bad things have happened. I looked down, and the river there in Jackson is just raging. I mean, raging. And this is pretty unusual for July. I mean, we get river flooding, typically, in that transition season, February, March, when you haven't greened up and you get a heavy rain event, or maybe even some snow melt if you've had a snow event and you get a heavy rain event after that, you can get some substantial river flooding. But this was different. It was like, wow, this is very different. I've never seen anything like this. So I drive into the office. The office is outside of Jackson a little ways. You have to take a smaller, pretty curvy road, Kentucky 30, pretty rural road. And there's a quicksand creek that runs right by that road. And it is raging. And so I know I've got very little time, and I've got to get down this road pretty fast because there's spots where it's going to be probably breaching the road potentially. And I didn't come into any big depths of water, but right below the hill, right below where our office, where you have to turn, it was just starting to breach that road at that point. And so I just barely made it because I had thought about doing all kinds of things, and even when I got into Jackson, I thought about calling one of the other forecasters I knew were behind me, but there was no cell phone service in Jackson, none. And so I knew bad things had happened overnight, because that is, even for Eastern Kentucky, that's unusual not to have cell phone service in Jackson. And so I barely make it into the office. I get up, and realize, now I'm getting spun up figuring out what actually happened overnight, and realized that we had just devastating flash flooding of the likes that I had never seen in my lifetime. And just seeing the radar and just seeing everything that was going on, you're just kind of catching up to what's happening. But at that point, we got two more staff in, and then we were locked in. There was nobody coming in or out. We had the mid shift there. We had several of us that had come in on day shifts. So we started kind of splitting up how we were going to do our shift work, which was basically going to be more or less 12-hour shifts at that point, or some kind of combination of that, just to make sure we had the staffing we needed there at the office. And it was just incredible to see how much water came up. We had an event back in May 2009 that was comparable on that creek, but this surpassed it by a lot. It was amazing to see how much the water was just raging on the road at that point. I mean, the road became part of that creek at that point, and there's just things floating by. There's just stuff everywhere. You're just like, wow, this is significant event. And you're seeing, significant rises on the river there that, of course, we went into record crest there in Jackson, Kentucky. And so that was amazing to see that, we'd had some river flooding even a year or two ago that got Jackson up and caused flooding in Jackson. We had people impacted from that. And so now we've got this event that's even worse than that was. A lot of people impacted from not just the flash flooding. And that's the interesting thing in Eastern Kentucky. Whitesburg was another area that got heavily hit, which is further south. So obviously Jackson wasn't the only place hit. Really, the bigger places were more south, where you have these smaller, it reminds me of stuff that you might see out west, like some sort of slot canyon or something like that. These are very, very, intricate ridges and valleys in Eastern Kentucky. And so, if you've got a lot of rain and you have soils that are already really, moist, and a lot of people may or may not know, but a lot of our soil is either rocky or potentially has clay, and so if you've got clay, you almost become hydrophobic. So you've got a lot of water that that can come out of these hills in eastern Kentucky and cause some pretty major flash flooding events. And of course, anybody gets over 8 inches of rain, in 24 hours, you're definitely going to have issues.
Rick, you got a question for Dustin. Why don't you go with that, and then I've got one for him too.
Yeah, Dustin, I remember seeing the reports in real time and seeing that you guys were stranded at the office, and the first thing you think of is the office is flooded or something. But it was that intersection at the bottom. Your office is kind of up on a hill, right? So it wasn't the office being impacted. It was that you couldn't drive up to the office. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So a lot of people think, maybe the office was impacted. Yeah, if we get impacted, we've got big issues. You're talking biblical flooding, right? Luckily we didn't, have any impacts directly, at our office. Yeah, we're at about 1,300. I believe down there you're probably around 800 or so. So pretty good rise up to the office there.
That's good. And how long were y'all stuck in the office?
So I started my day there. What was that, Thursday morning? We got some staff out of there by Friday evening. I didn't leave till Saturday afternoon.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Dustin, you talked about the mid shift was there when you got there, and we've talked on the show several times, and it's just flash flooding at night, covering a lot of rural area too. The reports are very sporadic. While you're seeing this enormous rain on radar, you still don't have probably a big influx of reports that are super accurate other than water's rising or there's flooding here or there. When did it occur to the mid-shift forecasters that something catastrophic was occurring?
Yeah, a lot of this actually occurred a lot on our evening shifts. I have to give it up to our evening shift for issuing a lot of those big decision warnings. I think it's just when you start to see the totals really start to get up there, you kind of know where you are flash flood guidance wise. You're pretty compromised. It was pretty quick that they realized this is different. This is not going to be the same. And I know it was hard for our warning forecaster that night because he was issuing emergencies without a lot of information. Not your typical like, hey, I've definitely got, rescues going on. I've definitely got all of this. He was doing it based off the fact he had a little information, but he was saying there's bad things happening right in this location. I know it. I've got to do something about it. And sometimes you have to make those tough decisions. Especially when you think about it. I mean, I didn't have cell phone service when I got to Jackson. So that there were people that were, compromised cell phone service. And then you go into the fact that you've got dispatchers that are one dispatcher probably for a whole county, that typically have really low call volume. They become a call volume of a New York City, probably, in a matter of time. I may be exaggerating a little bit there, but at least a larger or medium-sized city, all of a sudden you're taking in so many calls at that point of in need of rescue or whatever it is, if they can get out, and some of that may be that you couldn't get information out of some of these areas that are, more rural and have the lesser cell phone service. So it's certainly one of those things, James, that we dealt with, and we didn't have, even during the day, I think you would have had, more information for sure, right? You just have, daylight. But at night, man, it is tough in Eastern Kentucky to get that information that you need to really be confident in those warnings.
Unmute myself. Dustin, I was really struck by the video afterward of just the primeval beauty of those towns like Hazard. The only thing I knew about Hazard before the flood was the Dukes of Hazard. And what a spectacular looking place. Some of that drone footage going through those canyons, you would put that scenic beauty up against anything in the United States in some cases.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a beautiful part of the country, and so to see it in that kind of light was just incredible. And luckily, the city of Hazard, wasn't impacted. There's a couple of dams that kind of probably kept that from being the case. It was more between really Jackson and Hazard where you really had the big issues, and places getting a lot of rainfall kind of in between those spots. And so, it was kind of areas up. And then you had some flooding, of course, around that county for sure, no doubt. But I think the city of Hazard itself was actually, was fairly protected by the dam system.
Did you all have questions, worries about the health of dams? Do you have older dams? I mean, out here, nearly everything's been impounded 20th century. But you get back east of the Mississippi, and there are a lot of dams that went up by private companies here and there. What kind of worries did you have with those?
I think the biggest worry was not knowing where some of these slurry or other dams from like coal, the coal industry. I think that would probably be a bigger concern. I was deployed to FEMA Operations Center there in Hazard, and I know that was some of their concern going, into kind of the recovery mode was, okay, well, do we have some dams? Where are they at? And what shape are they in? Could we have another event? Could we have a kind of a secondary event, so to speak, just because one of those gave away or something like that. So there was some concern, I think. The office, I don't know that directly got called on that. But I think as far as the larger core dams or anything like that, I don't think there was ever concern. Now they did get I think there were some of those dams that reached some of the highest they've ever had, highest pools they've ever had in those. And so, there were people that were concerned, but the Corps was very confident that those dams were going to hold and not have any compromises in them. But certainly, I think that the private or any of those ones that might have been created by the coal industry were definitely concerned.
Twice now, because my dog is going crazy. Be quiet for just a minute. We should have known since 2016, when they put the Ark Encounter, a Christian theme park with a life-size Noah's Ark in Kentucky. This is not a good thing. maybe that should have been a sign to us that bad times were Noah's Ark. James A. just wrote Noah.
They're quick over there in the chat. Yeah, they are quick.
This guy keeps you on your toes. There is no question. But I think it's a real sign too when you see the Weather Service guy, or gal at the local grocery store, loading up on groceries. This is not a good sign. Because you would be hard pressed what to take back. Lots of Little Debbie, right. or what would you do for sure?
Right.
So well, our hearts and everything were with you through all of that, and a terrible situation. I know you did a showcase at the NWA annual meeting about engaging and informing with social media. Why don't you dive into that for a minute? Because lots of us have a love-hate relationship with social media, and talk about how you're channeling it in your work.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I did a presentation there just to talk a little bit about how I think social media has really changed how people can engage, especially researchers, and really get new information. I used to joke around the office that, hey, I found this out on Twitter before, I get an email about it, or I see it somewhere, in something that we're doing. And so I think it is a great place for researchers to engage, this kind of O2R and R2O. I think it can go both ways. And it's really neat to see how researchers are now putting their research out early, on Twitter or on some sort of platform that allows us, here at the practitioner level to actually see it and engage it, talk about it, maybe come up with some questions for the researcher to see how we can put this into operations faster if it's something that we feel that we could get into operations faster. And so I think there's a lot of ways that while social media takes a big, hit, I was listening to you guys' podcast, and you guys were talking about how, and I know, James, you get a lot of really bad stuff on Twitter, a lot of really bad, from all of the different climate change things to whatever it is, right? But there are good avenues, I think, and that's how we can engage this new culture coming in. I know, James, you're really ahead of the game in all the social media platforms you're on and all those things, and that's really cool because I'm trying to figure out, hey, how can I engage my meteorologist, even outside of work and outside of this process. I know I saw too that Rick Smith, you guys did a like a Google Meet. And talked about tornadoes in another part of the country or what was going on weather-wise in another part of the country. I think those are the ways we can learn to do our job better, to watch other things that are going on around the country, see how we might have made decisions and what that process would have been, and talk about it. I think these are the ways we can really engage our new folks coming into the weather service.
And James Spann, I heard some talk tonight that someone in the FCC is recommending that they ban TikTok. What you going to do without TikTok, James Spann?
I could live without it. And the deal, and people say, why are you on there? You're some old creeper guy on TikTok, and I don't dance, I don't cuss, and I'm not funny. And I'm there because I have to establish a relationship with 14 to 21-year-olds, and that's where they are. And for them to listen to you during severe weather, for them to listen to your warnings, for them to know where to go, they need a relationship with you. And you can't build it the day of a tornado event. You got to do it in the weeks and the months before a tornado event, where that's the reason I'm there. And that's the reason I'm on all these things. It's a matter of reaching people. And people aren't going to watch television. They're not going to watch traditional television, but they know where to go to find the live streams in their phones. So it's just a matter of building a relationship. That's all I'm trying to do. And if TikTok goes away, I won't cry. I'll put it that way. It's gosh.
I mean, I think it's great that you're engaging that different group, and you're trying to, reach out to, a different group of people who you may not be able to reach otherwise, that's always a good thing, I think, and because you're doing it for, so that when you do have the big situation, you can engage them, in the tornado warning phase, where whatever platform they're on, so I applaud it because I think that's the way, that's part of the way I'm kind of trying to use these different avenues to engage meteorologists in the weather service. We have a chat, on Facebook chat, I'll throw things on there that are interesting weather-wise or something. Hey, you should look at this. Or, we have a chat at work too, Google Chats at work, and we can throw information and kind of engage and talk about it. So I think these are all important tools to change the way we're engaging people. And you got to meet them where they are, right, James?
Yeah, and you got to be able to pivot real quick. I mean, this stuff is changing like a meteor streaking through the night every day. It's like on the tweeter. So you got, Elon Musk owns the tweeter now, and I have no time to keep up with this stuff. I don't even know if this guy's a right winger, a left winger, but I know that half the country's mad at this guy, and everybody's, I'm going to leave the tweeter. I'm leaving the tweeter. I'll never come back to the tweeter. And so they're going to Mastodon. Where are they going? I mean, you have to find out where these people are and be able to pivot really quickly. And it's easy for me because I'm a private sector guy. When you're working with a weather service, it's a little harder. I would imagine it's mind-boggling to keep up with this stuff. Did somebody's dog just poot here? What was that?
It's going to be ugly in the Murray house tonight when all this Captain D's comes home to roost.
That was some dog gas I heard there. Wow.
She's crying for more Captain D's. So I don't know. Maybe we can get some TikTok dollars for her and Captain D's. But
wow,
I forget totally where we are now. Somewhere. The show titles just keep rolling in. That's for sure. So yeah, James, I wonder. We really do rely on Twitter as meteorologists in a good way.
Well,
someone said it's the best and the worst of humanity, and
where
Kim said
I
there
am,
is no humanity in it, but it's
where
important to us.
Twitter is more of an internal thing. It doesn't reach the masses where I am, and I think that's true in most markets. Most people, Joe Q public, they're not on Twitter. It's more of a meteorologists talking, and it's kind of a news wire thing, and it's for journalists and to reach the reach the masses.
That are good.
Right. To reach the masses, you really need to be on, Instagram and Facebook and quite frankly, TikTok. Those are the big three right now. And but the Twitter thing is important. But again, I've seen a lot of people saying, and here I saw the other day where it's going to cost $20 a month if you want to keep your blue check.
Yep.
I'm not going to pay this guy a dime. I mean, fine. You take your blue check and go away. I mean, I don't care. But as people leave Twitter, if they do, where are they going? And it seems to me a lot of them are going to Mastodon, which is kind of an open source thing. And again, I've been on Mastodon for years. But we've just got to be able to pivot. Yeah. Mastodon is interesting. It's decentralized. There's not a central server. There's no entity that owns it. It's just kind of a free-for-all thing, and there's different instances, and you sign up with one of them, and it's interesting. And I see more and more people over there, but some of this stuff's going to catch on, some of it's not. You just have to be everywhere, and it's hard. And everybody says, I ain't got time to fool with that. Well, if you're here to reach the masses, you better have time to fool with it, because that's where they are. They're not going to. This is not Ozzie and Harriet in 1955 watching, General Hospital eating bonbons on television. They live over here now on these phones, and we have to be where they are. So again, that's why I'm dipping my toe in all these things. But again, I would be frustrated
that you even know what Mastodon is. I'd never heard of it, so we got an email.
Never heard of it
this week.
No.
Oh man, you guys need to find an instance and get on Mastodon. And over there you don't tweet, you toot. So it's not tweeting.
Beg your pardon?
Well, I'm a natural for that one, then.
Where's that dog?
Yeah, and again, it's. I like the fact that it's, there's no big brother, there's no right wing, there's no left wing, there's nothing watching you. And yeah, there can be nasty stuff, but there's nasty stuff on everything. And it kind of looks like Twitter. But yeah, it's the purple one there. It's Mastodon. So you guys can try it.
There you go. Well, and speaking about social media, Dustin, we know someone from your neck of the woods who was on our show a few weeks ago who's become quite the weather influencer, Ryan Hall. Some people love him, some people don't love him, but I have to say he's doing something that's, working to reach an audience. Whether you may disagree with this, that, or the other thing, what's your take on the phenomenon of social meteorologists that seem to be growing? It seems like every event, like the severe weather event in South Alabama Saturday, there were more and more people just live streaming weather coverage, and some good, some bad, but it's a different world. What do you think about it all?
That's a good question. I really don't know what to take from it. I know they're getting a lot of followers over there. Hopefully becoming ambassadors. But yeah, I just think it's interesting. I think all of this stuff is changing. All this media is changing daily, and I don't know where it's all going to go. I hope, like I said, that these folks are leading people in the right direction. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with all of that. I don't really follow too much of that stuff. So I'm not sure exactly what all he does over there. I believe he's from Eastern Kentucky, though, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think there's just all these new people coming online and doing all this stuff. And again, if they're saving lives, that's a good thing, but I don't know, what other things are going on, in the background. I don't know what I know there's always drama out there in the social media world and that kind of stuff. And I try to stay away from it, in terms of that.
My third unmuting myself. My dog has totally discombobulated me. Dr. Neal, you want to bring up that issue you just raised in the chat at this point?
Yeah, this is something. I mean, I think the NWA has this. I know the AMS has a lot of different broadcasts, certification seals and stuff, but I don't, is AMS, I mean, maybe Kim, you may know more about this than I do. Is AMS looking at certifications for social media?
We have a whole show on that, don't we, Kim?
Yeah, you can tell Neil was off doing something relaxing and fun and not hanging out with us last week. We had some of the folks from AMS who were working on that as part of the show. So if you want to learn more, if for our listeners, if you want to learn more too, if you missed last week's show, there's more detail there. But Erica detailed that we do have something in the works. It's making its way through right now. I guess there's a statement that's been drafted and it's been passed off, sort of from one deliberative body to another in the chain. So yeah, NWA does have one and AMS is working on another. And last week, we kind of had this really interesting conversation about what is the role of certifications and will they save us? And there was some feeling that, well, maybe they'll do something, but there could also be appetite out in the media sphere for there to be people who are the outsider who will never get that certification. And, but it is an interesting conversation trying to grapple with. There's all these spaces where people are communicating about weather and how do you try to come across as credible? I'm interested in what this panel thinks about the blue check thing. I mean, it's now been made more accessible. I don't remember exactly what Elon Musk said today about it. He said something about like, it's this like kings and peasants system or something for having the blue check. And now everyone can have one it was like $8 a month. You can get one. And I mean, some people are looking at this and saying, oh, this is going to be the downfall of us identifying anyone who's reputable as a weather source on Twitter. But you have people who have blue checks next to their name that also stir up controversy. It's just all that it says is they are actually that controversial person. So I'm curious what you all think. Are these things some of the big shifts that are going to be the end of days for us, or is it really nothing new under the sun?
You don't want to know what I think, do you?
Yeah.
We want to know what you think most of all.
Don't hold back.
I hate everything about social media. And I'll tell you, as great as my experience was being off the grid last week, when I was at the Mac store at the Genius Bar waiting for the Genius to fix my computer, the woman in front of me was having a complete meltdown that she was going to literally be without her phone for a couple of hours because she wasn't going to be able to, do social media stuff. And when he told me I might be without a computer for a couple of weeks because there was a back order, I was like, I don't care. Great. I think it brings out the worst in everyone. And I realize it's a useful tool for a lot of things, but it's hard to have it both ways. And it lends itself to toxic behavior and it becomes addictive to some people. And it's like, as much as people talk about opioids and all these other horrible things, no one's talking about internet addiction.
You're right.
I got a song for you guys. Okay, for that. I'm not going to play that song.
It sounded kind of like a cyborg, James.
Oh, did it?
Maybe
okay.
that was just my internet connection, Tim.
Yeah, no, you don't want to hear that song.
Dustin, we've all been excited about Ken Graham becoming the head of the Weather Service. Is that feeling sort of mutual through the rank and file?
Yeah, I think so. It was really cool. We actually, Ken Graham came to visit our office after the flooding, which I think, the staff really respected that. But we haven't had a director probably at our office since it was actually, became an office, probably back in the 90s. So it was really neat to have him there. He's taken an approach of caring about the people, which I think our new Mets are very much about the work-life balance, and so that really appeals to them from what his initiatives are. I think he's trying to do a lot of great things for what his Ken's 10, as he calls it. I'm sure you've seen that at some of the conferences. I think he talked about that at the NWA, and he has some ambitious goals. I'm excited to see where the Weather Service goes from here. I think we have an exciting future with him and at the helm, and it will be a fun to see where everything goes. I think he, coming from the Hurricane Center and coming from, coming all the way up from intern, I think he gains a lot of respect from the staff for that too. That's very unusual. I don't think there's been any director that's done that up until him. And so that's a really neat thing to have him come from the operations side of the house and make it to director. I think that really gives him a leg up, from a staff perspective and getting them to buy into what his initiatives are.
You mentioned his heart for people. I know, he has that heart for employees. He also has it for the publics that we serve. And earlier you'd mentioned social sciences being something that is growing in importance in the agency and learning methods, tools for communicating more effectively. You're loving seeing things like early research results coming out that you can use. I'm curious, from your perspective as a SUE, where in the forecast office is social science disseminated from? Is it sort of falling on your shoulders as a SUE to try to be both physical and social scientist and translate research across both sides? I've seen some conversation that it should be the WCM. Where do you think this is practically going?
Yeah, I think I think this is a great opportunity for both the SUE and the WCM to kind of meld and work together on some of these things, because a lot of this stuff's going to have to translate into what we can do in operations versus what we can do from a messaging perspective, which is more on the WCM side of dealing with what our partners' needs are and what the public need is. And so I think it's a great opportunity for us to meld. I think there's a lot of things we're doing in the SUE realm and kind of trying to break down some of those silos, of what a SUE is and what a SUE does. Before, a SUE kind of, was all heavily researched and all heavily one-sided towards what they were doing out there in operations. But I think now there's a lot of crossover that we do with the SUE and the WCM. I think we have to work a lot together because it's just important for me to spend some time, in an integrated warning team as it is for the WCM, because I need to see, hey, what's going on out there? What are the needs of some of these partners, and how can I translate some of that maybe from a research perspective or even from an operations perspective to make those things happen, And so I think, working with, Rick Smith or like my WCM, Jane Marie Wicks, she does a great job of working, a lot of the social science, well, I wouldn't say social science, but working with underserved populations. She's doing a lot of work with the Amish right now and part of what, this team's doing in Kentucky. And so those are all really things that I can also try to say, okay, how can we help from an operations perspective? Are there new products that we need to generate that these folks might use or whatever the case is? And so I think these are ways that we can work in tandem to make this all come out and be a great way to message the event and work in the social science there.
Dustin, how are you set up to communicate with your media in Eastern Kentucky, and how did they do that night, through this whole event?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We have a really good partnership. We have one real media partner that's down in Eastern Kentucky. The other media partners are in Lexington, which are technically in Louisville CWA, but we work with both. We work with all of those partners, but we work probably most heavily, especially in this event, seeing that that news station's actually in Hazard. And so, so we communicate through social, I shouldn't say social media, NWS chat really. It's probably the main, but we do some communication through Twitter, social media, things like that. But I remember, one of the things that helped us a lot, though, even on the other end of that spectrum, when you talk about the flooding event, is we were able to see some of their footage on TV in operations. And so that was another way we were able to see what was going on And you guys, from a media perspective, were able to help in that warning process that way. But a lot of it's done through NWS chat these days.
Hey, Dustin, I got a question about the culture at the individual Weather Service offices from a Sioux perspective. And again, where I am in the broadcasting business, we have multiple Weather Service offices within the coverage area that I provide for. The culture's different at different offices. Some offices are really aggressive with warnings. I mean, they go total carpet bombing when it comes to severe weather. Warning after warning after warning after warning. Some offices are conservative. They're really working hard to reduce the FAR. And there's a lot of inconsistency. Is there any way you think we can maybe get everybody kind of on the same page at some point going forward?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we can do. Obviously, we're always looking for ways to improve our warning process, and what we're doing. I think a lot of that comes down to, especially these bigger events, is looking at after action and looking at what we're doing as an office. Is what we're doing the best way to do it? And I think we all have to look back and say at every event and say, hey, can we do better? What can we do better? How can we do better? And I think we're looking at doing that at our office much more. Is just more after action plan, or after action results, or whatever you want to call it. And just seeing what could be done better. I mean, for instance, this event, this flooding event, we're going to look at that pretty heavily. From a regional perspective as well, and kind of see how could we do things better? Are there things we could do better? Because, like you said, you want to improve that warning process. But it's interesting you bring up the warnings. I saw some recent research, I think, came out from that Severe Local Storms Conference, I think, talking about how they weren't sure that the amount of tornado warnings was making a difference on some of these things. And so, what from a social science perspective how does that change? And what does it change as a result of what people are going to do? I know you talk a lot about on here about how Birmingham has really done a great job of getting people, in the right seats, so to speak, when these events occur, and officers are looking at that. So I think, the agency's certainly looking at ways we can provide mutual aid, even, in some of these situations, and then provide that ability to kind of cross those boundaries of between offices and be able to help one another through these processes. So I think it will improve. I think things will improve, but I can certainly see where there would be inconsistencies from one office to another.
Awesome. So we're going to have to take a quick time out here because we are running a little long because the show has been really good, but we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to go to Tony Rice and his astronomy report. Then we'll go to Jen with This Week in Tornado History. We'll come back and get some email from Jen. We've got picks of the week and much more all coming up as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
Tuesday, November 8th is Election Day here in the U.S. There will also be a total lunar eclipse that morning, the 2nd of 2002. Partial eclipse begins at 4:09 a.m. Eastern that Tuesday morning as the moon begins its journey through the umbra, or the darkest part of the Earth's shadow. It slips completely into that shadow, turning a deep orange at 5:16 a.m. Eastern. It begins to emerge about an hour and 25 minutes later. The point of greatest eclipse, when the moon will be at its deepest red color, will be just before 6 a.m. Eastern. Unlike solar eclipses, which vary in timing depending on where you are, lunar eclipses are identical, once you adjust for the time zones, of course, wherever you are. As long as the moon is above the horizon for you, you can see the eclipse. Here on the East Coast, the moon will have set before that partial eclipse phase ends at 7:49 a.m. The farther west you go, the more of a complete show you'll see. You might have seen this one described as the first eclipse on an election day, and that got me breaking out my slide rule and a few history books for a little fact checking. Yes, this is indeed the first time a total lunar eclipse has been visible from the United States on the first Tuesday following the first Monday in November, and that's not going to happen again until 2394. But there have been a lot of lunar eclipses on days when Americans have gone to the polls. Just most of them weren't visible from the US, or the US at the time. Election day as we know it wasn't a thing until 1845, when Congress enacted the Presidential Election Day Act. According to Evan Andrews at the History Channel, before then, states held their elections anytime they pleased within a 34-day period before the first Wednesday in December. A total lunar eclipse was visible around moonrise on the evening of November 24th, 1844, across the then 26 United States. But that was a Sunday, so it's pretty safe to say the polls were closed. So for total lunar eclipses, you've got to go a bit further back to November 3rd, 1808, a Thursday, when James Madison was on his way to being elected the fourth president. For a bit of the math behind this, check out github.com/rtphokey/election day eclipses. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokey for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, November 1st, 1922. An estimated F3 tornado tracked across parts of Jasper County, Missouri on this day and struck the town of Webb City. 25 homes at the south edge of town were destroyed. The funnel lifted over the business district and then caused damage again on the northeast side of town. An 8-room house was nearly leveled in this area. At least 15 injuries occurred and there was one fatality. Mrs. Nancy Ford, age 54, was found lying on a mattress in a neighbor's yard 100 to 200 yards from her destroyed home. Her husband, Joe, was at work at an ice plant at the time. The Joplin Globe reported on some oddities that occurred in the tornado in a section titled Freaks of the Tornado. Here are a few notable ones. The home of Frank Elliott, a blind man, was blown completely away. His son Harry was in bed when the tornado struck. Harry's bed remained in place and he was not even awakened. 2 homes were demolished, but the coal shed between the 2 of them were left standing. A garage was blown away. The car inside was reportedly picked up and carried around the house, being deposited on the other side of the home. Read about this event and over 500 more at tornadotalk.com.
All right, time to dive into the good old email inbox, and just maybe there's something in there this week.
We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
All righty. So for the first email, I'm going to bring Dustin back in because Bill blew me off earlier in the show. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I just totally, set her up and then just blew right on through that stuff.
I went looking for the email and everything, and then he just went right by me. I'm not even here. No, but I'm going to bring Dustin back in because we had an email come in from our friend James Lewis. And this could really go for any kind of weather disaster, but we'll focus in on flooding. But he said that my question is, after an event that wipes out a local community, what portion of people actually stay and rebuild? Are the people rebuilding in that area generally the same people who lived there before, or are new people moving in due to the cheaper property despite the risks?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it goes back to depending on kind of how that works from a FEMA flood potential, because once you have one of these floods, if you kind of get on that FEMA mapping and they start mapping and saying, hey, this is a flood zone or what have you, some of those people may not be able to afford flood insurance and afford to build back and those kinds of things. So, once you wipe out these communities in some of these rural Eastern Kentucky areas, I don't know how much will be built back. I'm really not sure. It will be interesting to see, I think, over time. But you also have to remember, too, this is like generational property, in some of these places. Generations have lived in some of these hollers and hills. And so it'll be really difficult for them because, their grandparents and grandparents may have, grown up in these areas and they don't really have other places to go. That kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the, socioeconomic issues in Eastern Kentucky.
A lot of these places don't, if it's been passed down, there's no mortgage, so there's no requirement to have any kind of insurance at all, whether or not it's flood or not. So they may, even though they want to stay, they may not have the economic means to do so.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. The next email I have, James Spann's going to have to help me here because I'm going to butcher this name. But Eric Harrison wrote, I live in Bon Secour?
Oh, yes.
That's it, right?
Yes.
Bon Secour, Alabama. And this past Saturday, there was an EF1 tornado about a mile away from my house. One thing I noticed while taking cover was there was no thunder. After the rotation passed, I went outside and it felt like a normal heavy downpour. My question is, on the social science side, does the lack of lightning in a storm mislead the importance of the call to action?
We have a social scientist on the program.
We do. I don't know if that.
Kim.
I'm not going to pretend to know. I mean, I think, we know that people seek confirmatory evidence very often from, the environment. Is the environment, does it seem like there is a storm worth paying attention to in this environment? So in light of that, you could suspect that anything that's not the cue they would come to associate with having a bad storm, if lightning is their thing, then maybe it would. I wouldn't say that we have direct evidence of that specific thing, but the scarier, bigger, badder that a storm feels and that it's obvious, we do know that helps people to confirm that what meteorologists are telling them about this being a situation worth attending to and responding to, it does help.
I mean, that happens with meteorologists in a weather service office. We get a report of a tornado, a landspout. We're like, there's no lightning, so who knows? Maybe.
And there was no lightning. I was tracking those storms very closely, and there was zero lightning.
Yeah, these were low top showers that produced, I want to say, 6 confirmed tornadoes, 6 in one evening. This was a significant
10
deal
in Alabama and Mississippi.
Very populated part of the world down there in Mobile and Baldwin counties. And that was a, pretty rough night. We're just glad that nobody, to my knowledge, was injured and we had no fatalities with that, but there was some structural damage. But yeah, low top showers, they're not thunderstorms. That's the other thing. What do you call them? We got a severe shower with a tornado here, but they're technically not thunderstorms when you have no thunder. So, but they're boogers to deal with for sure.
I tell you, I got to watch Ryan Stennett, James, our friend, who's now at NBC 15, Allen Seal Station in Mobile. And he did a great job with a lot of technical difficulties that night. The computer took a lightning hit, all sorts of stuff. Ryan looked real good on the air. It was fun to watch him covering the storms down there.
Yeah, he needed some help, man. It is brutal doing it by yourself. It is just next to impossible. So, yeah, for a one-man band, he did good.
So one more email, and this came in from WeatherBrains fan Patrick Allen, who was watching the pre-show and heard James talking about Nick Saban and how awesome it would be to have him on the show. And he had the idea, and I actually thought about this too. What if he could come on around the April 27th outbreak and talk about the impact on Tuscaloosa and how the football team, I know that they were huge in helping in the community. I think that would be a really great idea. So Patrick brought that up as well. So thanks everybody for your emails. Email at weatherbrains.com so you can we can hopefully get you on the show, or if not, we'll try to answer you over email too if we can. And also sign up for our newsletter because we send that out every Thursday morning. Back to you, James Fan.
All right, let's do picks of the week. We're going to go around the horn. Everybody's going to share something that is interesting, that is weather related. This can be a website, social media message, book, hardware, software, anything cool. So let's start with Dr. Jacobs, because I have a funny feeling he's got a good pick for us this week. Go, Neil.
So my pick of the week is an announcement coming out of NASA that they have selected a team of 16 people who are going to study UFOs and to determine what's the natural cause and what isn't. And I think they're trying to blame weather on this, but we all know it's really aliens. I honestly think they're just sort of tired of the Giorgio Tsoukalos guy getting all the free time on the airwaves. So we'll see what they come up with.
So the question is anybody on the show in that group? Anybody here? Neil, are you in that group?
No. I think that they knew my bias.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting subject. I mean, we can all laugh and have fun with it, but it's very interesting. And so anyway, all of these links will be up on the website, weatherbrains.com. All right, Troy Kimmel, you probably got something good for us. Go.
I found an article here a couple of days ago. It actually is from EOS, which I think is the AGU's a magazine or something to that effect. And it's an article talking about something we already all know for the most part, especially over the south and western U.S., about all the streams drying up, about the fact that we are really getting to the point in the south and western U.S. where we're really at infrastructure. I mean, we're getting to the point where lakes are drying up. And it was a real interesting article. It came, I believe, as a result, if I remember, from a journal, Water Resources Research. I think it came from an article that was done there. But this is kind of an interesting article. To be honest with you, it's kind of depressing because we know how bad it is. We've heard about the Western Colorado. We've heard about a lot of other rivers and over the Western, Southwestern U.S. U.S. streams drying up from EOS magazine.
And again, that'll be up on weatherbrains.com. Rick Smith, what you got for us? Give us a good one.
I think Kim's pick last week was the SLS conference, the program, if I remember correctly. Well, that went on last week, the AMS Severe Local Storms Conference. Always lots of cool stuff. Yeah. And I just picked one of many good threads and series of tweets. Andrew Lyons, who's a forecaster at the Storm Prediction Center, had a really good presentation. And he posted all of his slides on Twitter about classifying the convective mode of tornadoes over the last 20 years. Were they QLCS? Were they supercells? Really fascinating. You can see all the slides there along with some of his commentary. And if you just go back and look at that 30 SLS hashtag, there's tons of good stuff in there. Peek into the new EF scale that's coming, all kinds of cool stuff. So always good stuff at the SLS conference.
Awesome. And Kim, let's go over to you. What's your pick of the week? Go.
My pick of the week is this really neat set of very brief workshops that have been hosted by the WMO, World Meteorological Organization, High Impact Weather, High Weather Research Program. And they are focusing on defining what are impacts and how are different countries collecting data to substantiate forecasts for impacts. And it has been fascinating. One of these was held this morning at like 7 local time. They've been broad spanning in times because they span the whole globe, pulling in people from different countries and just learning about the depth of what's going on in Indonesia and Mongolia, and like incredibly diverse sets of countries are doing a really amazing array of things to try to understand how weather affects their populations. And honestly, listening to it, I felt like we had a lot to catch up on in some ways. So I'll be posting that. It'll be a link to register for the workshops. Anyone can, but that registration is free and it just gives you access then to the recordings.
Excellent. Great. And again, that'll be up on weatherbrains.com. Let's get James A. before he goes into Eyewitness News, live, local, late breaking.
Hey,
the Weather Authority.
Yeah, we've got baseball on tonight. So
that's right. You're a Fox affiliate. That's right.
Yeah, boy. I'm going to be here late tonight. But it's a good chance to get a bunch of odds and ends done that you don't have time to do those odds and ends at the office. So my picture is a relaxing, ethereal time lapse of fog rolling over Mount. Let me make sure I have this right. Mount Tamopolis State Park. It's just north of San Francisco. But you get some little new age music and very ethereal time lapse. It's very relaxing, and it just is a great demonstration that the atmosphere is a fluid.
And it's too stinking cool. That's awesome. Yeah. My pick, couple of graphics done by the Weather Service in Flagstaff. I just thought they were cool. They did Interstate 40 and Interstate 17 across their CWA with the terrain. You could actually see, the elevation of those interstates and where snow is expected to fall in relation to elevation, which I thought was just a cool graphic. I love new graphics I've not seen before, and maybe they've done that for a long time, but I just thought that was great. Caught that on a tweet today. All right, Jen, what you got for us? Go.
So we just released a new summary, and Dustin may think this one's a cool one because it's our first one for the state of Maine. The Caribou Connor, Maine F2 tornado, August 11th, 1954. Big thank you to one of my newest writers, Zach, who now has produced 2 summaries for us and has covered 2 states that we haven't been able to write in. And this one sadly did kill an older lady, and we discovered about a 5.2 mile path. So it's a quick read, but it's an interesting read on a place that rarely gets tornadoes, but this was an interesting one to kind of cover. So
good deal. And again, that link will be up on weatherbrains.com. All right, Dustin, we've stalled long enough, so bring us something good. Go. And he might be muted.
Oh man, I did the mute thing tonight.
Okay, Bill.
I had to do it once, Bill, right?
I think you are, Bill.
It's contagious.
No, I kind of got two. I would encourage you to go check out our event page for the flooding from July. It's funny because we're doing a lot more mutual aid in the Weather Service and not just trying to do everything by ourselves. And somebody the MIC in St. Louis called me, Jim Civiking, called me up and said, "Hey, I got somebody who wants to write an event page for you." And here we are in the middle of the event. We've got, we're starting to get new staff in, but we're still, trying to deal with everything that we're dealing with on our end. And somebody wants to do an event page and did an excellent job. So kudos to St. Louis for really helping us with that event page and getting that done for us. And also I wanted to advertise that you can go to USA Jobs. There's actually a lot of new jobs that just hit the streets this weekend. Two of those are here at NWS Jackson. So come work for us here at NWS Jackson. We'd love to have folks apply here and come work at our office. So would appreciate that.
An office with a wide variety of weather situations.
That's right.
You will not be
Right.
bored. At that
Yeah,
office.
you even had a big winter storm and cold event this last January, didn't you?
Yes, yeah, we have winter storms, we have ice storms. That wasn't too long ago that we had a big ice storm. So we pretty much get the gamut of weather here. Come work for us. We've got a lot of fun stuff to do here.
That's the first time we've ever had a help wanted ad on the show, James.
I like it. I like it. No, it's tough. I mean, I'm telling you that nobody wants to do this anymore. Used to be, I'd have an opening. I've had like over 100 applicants for one opening. Now, if I get 2 or 3, I'm lucky. I mean, times have changed. All right, Bill Murray, go. What you got?
You're a tough boss, James. That's for sure. James, my pick of the week is from a podcast, not a weather podcast, but Bill Curtis really would mean it when he said this one's really a big deal. It's Radio Lab. It's been around a long time. I love that podcast, and they finally tackled something in the weather, and really had some interesting information on something that Kim has sort of conversed about with the Florida insurance situation, and how that evolved and how it turned into what it is today, and it's really kind of scary in terms of trying to marry development and the insurance factor and all those things in it. I did think it was really interesting. I can't remember the name of the development, but just northwest of Fort Myers, there's a development that came through the hurricane totally unscathed. It was built for the homes to be hurricane proof, fully redundant underground cable, totally solar powered. And I think that's a fascinating study in, what's possible in those type of environments. So anyway, if you get a chance to catch that episode of Radio Lab, it starts out talking about Irving Crick and somehow ends up at insurance. And all through there, there's some very interesting stuff. Got some great shows coming up. Paul Aniquez is going to be with us next week talking about the new heat scale he's been working on. I understand we have a GIS show on the 14th. Rick, is that still on board? And
it is still on. Yeah, we're going to be putting that together. That'll be cool.
That's going to be awesome. Neil, we still on for Storm Surge the 21st, or is it a bit too early for Storm Surge?
We may have to keep pushing that to the right because it's still some uncertainty in the rest of the season here, but it's definitely it's coming up.
And we're going to remember the Kentucky tornadoes on the 5th and the 12th. First, we're going to have a bunch of folks on the 5th. Trent Okerson, I butchered his name earlier. Noah Bergeron from WPSD. The Paducah WCM is going to be with us, and Dan McKimmey, who's a forecaster at Louisville, are slated to be on that show. And then Joseph Trujillo and some other researchers. Kim, are you quarterbacking that show on the 12th? Is that right?
I think so. Yep.
Okay, good. All right, I just want to make sure I don't drop the ball on anything. And I think I should get a gold star for my guest tonight. Dustin, I hope we made it worth your while to miss the Sioux dinner. We really enjoyed our time with you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on.
We'll blow the foghorn just for that. I don't think anybody cares about baseball on the show but me. Man, the Phillies are just clobbering Houston 7-0. And we were in Philadelphia this year. I'm telling you, if you want your Major League Baseball team to win the World Series, invite the Spans up there one summer, and over and over and over and over, we've seen this happen. Like the Cubs. I mean, it's just remarkable. So they're doing
paid trip for you next year.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So Dustin, plug your social media. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I'm at SeymourWeather.com. That really came from my hometown in Tennessee, so kind of an odd one there. But yeah, that's mainly I spend most of my time on Twitter, not too much on Facebook. But yeah, you can look me up on Facebook too if you want. Yeah, get in touch with me. Yeah, definitely let me know. I'll try to help out and mentor anybody I can that wants to come join our team or come join anywhere in the weather services. So just let me know.
Awesome. Well, it's been a really, really good show. Thanks to everybody for being on with us tonight. And if you would like to get in touch with us, our email address here, it's email@weatherbrains.com. We typically are live Monday nights. Again, this is a Tuesday night special this week, but we'll be back on next Monday, 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. And if you want to watch it live, youtube.com/weatherbrains. And again, email@weatherbrains.com is the email address. But we got to put the bow on this one. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week and God bless.
Yeah, thanks, Dustin. A lot of fun.
Dustin, that was a great show. Great show.
Thanks,
tonight. This was
panel.
good.
Everybody was awesome.
Yeah.